Okay, thank you very much for joining this In-Conversation webinar. I'm delighted to be joined by Sara Thiam, the Chief Executive of Prosper, and appreciate you joining us to discuss all things marine economy.
For those of you who don't, great to be here.
Thank you. For those who don't know me, I'm Ross Thomson. I'm the lead partner in our commercial real estate team and a member of our marine economy group. So our marine economy group is made up of various experts across the firm, recognising the breadth and depth of the marine sector and the requirements of our clients. And throughout the course of September, we're shining a light on the marine economy, the opportunities and challenges, the people and organisations that make a difference, and the issues that matter most. Now, in June, Prosper published its report, The Blueprint, which is focusing on the state of the Scottish economy as a whole and highlighting opportunities within existing and emerging sectors, and looking at how Scotland can unlock its potential, compete globally going forward. And now, as you'd expect, given the nature of Scotland's economy, many of the key recommendations and information in there is very relevant to the marine and blue economies, and it's that area of the report that we're going to focus on in this short session. So maybe before I get into some of the specifics, is there anything, say, you wanted to say just around the general importance of the marine economy and how that's interacted with your conclusions across the Scottish economy as a whole?
Yeah, certainly, and thanks, Ross. Really our blueprint is about a 10-year forward look at the Scottish economy, and growth is a priority for both governments, as we know. So I think probably the kind of three overarching themes that come through the blueprint are a stronger Scottish economy in which everyone can get on in life, making the best of our energy and our assets to power our own country and create good jobs, and then also a Scotland where we get things done with the places and public services that work better. So those are the kind of three main themes. But I guess the real story is actually there are significant opportunities for growth, and Scotland has a lot to bring to the party. So even if you think about the UK government's missions around growth and about clean energy, in fact, it's a shared mission for both governments, actually, it's very clear that Scotland has so much to offer and that there are real opportunities for growth there. So, fundamentally, it's a story of growth, and you'll have seen the very excellent work done by Highlands and Islands Enterprise, which gives a feel for the size of the prize. And the marine economy is obviously a big part of that. And offshore floating wind being just one of those opportunities. But as we know, we're world class in things like aquaculture and have been for some time. So, yeah.
Thank you. The report's very wide ranging. There's a number of key recommendations. There's lots of detail around those as to what Prosper would recommend, some of them quite bold. So I thought we could tease some of that out in the context of the marine economy, looking at sort of three key areas. Firstly, ports, harbours and marine infrastructure, then looking at people, skills and innovation, and then communities. So if we start with ports, harbours and marine infrastructure, the report highlights the importance of modernising our ports and harbours to support the offshore energy sector that you've mentioned. So what does modernisation look like in practice, do you think?
Well, it's primarily about increased capacity, isn't it? So we really need more capacity at our ports to support, to service that growing offshore energy industry. More space at port quaysides. We're going to have more and more operation and maintenance of fixed and floating wind. Now, Ardersier is a great example of that kind of increasing in port capacity. But equally, you've got places like Port of Aberdeen, who really, got out ahead of the action early on, made significant investments in modernising, upgrading, expanding their port facilities to get themselves ready for the energy transition opportunities. Still today, much of the work that's being done in a place like Port of Aberdeen is, oil and gas primarily, 90 to 95%. But actually, things are increasingly getting ready for this transition piece. So we're on a journey. We are on a transition, but it's about ensuring that we're ready to grab the opportunities where they come. The other thing I think we've called for is really a very clear investment strategy for Scottish ports, for each of them understanding the significance of their geographical location, what the strengths of their immediate industries are, and where there are opportunities where they have the right set of circumstances that they can attract in some of these new opportunities around carbon capture and storage, hydrogen, and so on. I mean, the other great example is Kishorn, of course, where you've got kind of aquaculture and port coexisting and really exciting development and things going on there too.
As you say, there's a lot already happening, but one of the challenges is ensuring that the capacity is there to meet the requirements of the offshore opportunity and the likely timelines for that. And you've mentioned investment, but is there anything else you think can be done to accelerate the modernisation of our marine infrastructure to ensure it's ready in time to meet the opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, the only show in town is blended finance, isn't it? It has to be about public-private partnership. And we have a number of really exciting vehicles. So in Scotland, we were, early out the traps with Scottish National Investment Bank. We now have National Wealth Fund, whose priorities will really be shaped by the industrial strategy and by the priority sectors. But both Scottish National Investment Bank, National Wealth Fund have a role, and British Business Bank to an extent as well, have a role in crowding in that private investment. So I think, really it's about keeping very closely focused on some of the opportunities there in things like the industrial strategy. One of the things that's very close to our hearts and is always important to us, and partly why we exist, is about ensuring that Scotland's getting a bit of the action and where we have real strengths that we can play to those. So one of our concerns recently has been, the industrial strategy is terrific. Broadly, the growth sectors that are identified within that strategy, which include energy, of course, are the right ones in our view. The missing one perhaps is food and drink from a UK perspective, because Scotland is home to UK's #1 food and drink exports. But I think the concern that we have is in terms of the delivery of the modern industrial strategy. The combined mayoral authorities in England are being given increased powers around infrastructure, around skills, really control of their own destiny and their own region in terms of shaping the future economy of those regions. So it's just about, because we do not have those structures in Scotland, we can't always bundle up the investment opportunities in the way that a Manchester can. That it's got things at scale. And actually, even to an extent in the northeast of England and some of the ports and harbours infrastructure around that, the combined mayoral authorities, there is a risk that kind of gives them a head start. But I think there's really good, I think one of the real strengths that you have, and what we have in the north of Scotland, is actually much better and closer working between Highlands and Islands and the northeast. And sort of really coming together of some of the kind of strategic bodies, some of our trade bodies around, offshore energy and Scottish renewables, working much, much better together, because there's an understanding that they both have particular strengths, and that actually working together better is absolutely critical if we're going to land some of this international opportunity.
And linked to that, obviously, in terms of servicing the work to be done from these ports and harbours is around the supply chain capacity, and the report touches on seeking to grow the domestic supply chain as well. So maybe get a bit more detail as to what Prosper consider can be done to help stimulate that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we see a real, link to the opportunity of manufacturing and assembly close to ports. That requires space and facilities and port and harbour sites. But it's also about expanding grid for shore connections and shore hookup from renewable sources, for making the most of opportunities like cruise ships and so on, which we're already beginning to see around our ports and harbours. No lack of a kind of entrepreneurial spirit there, frankly, and a real opportunity to exercise it again. So the message that I would always give is, I was very struck. We did a really good podcast, our podcast Prosperity Unlocked, with the chief execs of both green free ports. So Callum McPherson at Port of Cromarty and Sarah Murray from Grangemouth. But the analogy Callum used was, well, in a bakery, you don't worry about, there's no need to fight over crumbs. There's more than enough work to go around. So it's about growing the size of the pie. So I guess it's really about coordinating between those assets and between those port facilities, which makes us more resilient. It can ensure we're supporting some of those industrial clusters that we're seeing around, energy in the northeast, CCUS, hydrogen, offshore wind. What are the places and spaces best geared up to servicing those new opportunities, and how do we make sure that we're all pulling together? And wagons in a circle internationally when we're out there selling ourselves. We've got a very exciting investment conference coming up. It's been led by our financial services sector, but actually, we have to be out there banging the drum in the world to say there's a once in a generation opportunity here. We know how to do this stuff. We've got the space, we've got the facilities. Come and invest here. We'll give you a soft landing. We're ready for this. We're keen to make it happen. So, but just being really strategic about it and recognizing where there are those opportunities, but there's more than enough work to go around.
Yeah, and I've heard Callum talk in those terms at other events before, and is obviously very passionate about it. And your report talks
Scotland.
Absolutely, and your report talks about sort of regional port clusters, and you've touched on some of that there. But is there more in policy terms you think can be done out with the green free ports to try and assist ports in working together? And is there any more or any specific examples as to how you might see that happening with their existing port infrastructure?
I mean, I guess that probably would come into, one of the things that we've called for is about a kind of ports investment strategy. So I think, the whole thing about a strategy is that you are ensuring proper joined up working and really playing to your strengths, and ensuring that all parts of the ecosystem are informing that and developing that in partnership with them.